Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Adult Chair on rashpixel.fm. I'm Pete Wright, and it feels like it's been too long, Michelle Chalfant.
I know, Pete
Why don't
Wright.
you call me anymore?
Feels like it's been a really long time.
It really does. You were cheating on me with the last episode. You did it all by yourself.
I'm sorry.
Jeez. But we're back, and it's fall, and all the kids are in school, and you are now practicing empty nesting, I gather.
Sort of.
Sort of. Isn't that what it's like? Do you drive a convertible yet?
No, I had a little bit of a swap. Like, I lost one kid to college. I shouldn't say lost him, but one kid, my oldest went to college. And then my husband had the wild idea to get he really wanted to have a foreign exchange student come live with us. So within 2 weeks, one left, and then I got a new one. And then I still have my younger son in 10th grade. Yeah. So I don't feel like an empty nest. I really don't. But it's kind of nice because my younger one now drives. He just got his license.
Oh, wow.
I do feel pretty free, I have to say. It's kind of crazy.
That's awesome.
It's so crazy.
And terrifying.
Like, nobody needs me anymore.
Yeah, right.
It's like, oh. Yeah,
Aww.
it's hard.
Sad clown, Eeyore.
It is. It's a little hard, but I was like, okay, nobody needs me. Okay. So I feel free from that perspective, I should say.
Well, that's outstanding. And we are back to talk today about something that has come up time and again, both in your practice and beyond. We are talking about introversion and extroversion, and how do you figure out which one you are? That's what we're doing today. Make sure you head over to theadultchair.com before we dig in. You can learn more about the show, and please, please, please sign up for that mailing list, and we'll send you an email every time a new episode hits the feed. You can always subscribe for free in iTunes or Google Play, anywhere finer podcasts are served. And, of course, you can join the conversation on Facebook or Twitter, and we would love to hear from you. Okay, introversion, extroversion. I think you're an extrovert. I mean, an introvert. I think you're an introvert. That's what I think.
Why would you say that? What makes you say that I'm an introvert, Pete?
Well, we've been working together long enough, and I know when I know what's going on when you go dark, because I do the same thing.
We do, don't we?
Yeah.
I'm like, where is Pete? I've emailed him 5 times, no response. I'm like, oh, he's in his cave. Okay, I'll wait
well,
till
it's
it comes
funny,
out.
Right? It's good to know that, because I spent a lot of years trying to figure out who I was and didn't really understand why I feel so uncomfortable in my skin until I came to terms with it.
Right. That's key, coming to terms with it. But yeah, this is why I really am excited to talk about this today, because, and I think it's been on our list for a year at least to talk about. And just recently I've had, it seems like in the last 3 weeks, like at least 1 or 2 clients a week have come in and talked about it, or friends have brought it up, and it's just come up. I had a girl recently come in, and she said she wanted me to see her daughter because she felt like her daughter was suffering from depression or something was really wrong. And I said, well, tell me more. I want to understand, what do you mean by something's wrong? And she said she comes home and she goes right up to her bedroom, and she's just locked in her bedroom.
Wow.
And I said, okay. I said, and she said, well, she'll come eat, but she's really short. She doesn't want to talk to anybody. She's really crabby. And I said, has the school reported anything? Have her teachers said anything? Have her friends' parents said anything? She said, no, she's just like that with us.
Wow.
And I said, okay. I said, it sounds to me, and I don't know because I don't know your daughter. I said, but it sounds to me like you might just have an introvert. It's that simple. And she said, this was really interesting. And her mom said, I don't know, maybe. And I said, no, this is a real thing. I said, you may have an introverted child. It's not a bad thing or a good thing. It just is. And I said, she needs that alone time. She says, well, I like my alone time too, but I don't have to, put myself in my bedroom. And I said, hear what you just said though. I said, you like your alone time sometimes. I said, an introvert needs their alone time. So, it's just a very interesting thing, because many people that I talk to that are extroverts will say, oh yeah, I like alone time. I'm just like you. I'm like, no.
Yeah, no.
So, I have I have a friend that I love, and, her son, we were just talking the other night, we were all at dinner together, and she actually she calls her son, who's in my son's class, a shut-in. I said, why do you call him that? And she said, well, he comes home from school, which, by the way, our school has about, anywhere from 1,600 to 2,000 kids in that whole school, like 450 kids per class. So it's big. Now imagine, as you being an introvert, what that's like. Then he goes to like football practice, and then he goes to soccer practice, and he comes home and he goes straight up to his room and closes the door and turns out the lights. And he may watch a movie, or he may play on his phone for a few hours. And his mom said, well, I want him to talk to us. He doesn't want to engage with us. And I said, I'd be crawling up the driveway if that was my day. Like, I can't even imagine. And I looked at her son and I said, I bet you $1 million that you are an introvert. And he goes, yes, I've been trying to tell them that, and they don't listen to me. They keep calling me a shut-in. And I said, he's not a shut-in. I said, if he is, then I am too, because that's what we do as introverts.
Well, and here is the problem that I have run into. When dealing with, when trying to communicate about this topic with people who tend to be very extroverted, people who are in some way judging me by their experience with me, right?
Right.
The fact that I am a podcaster, the fact that I am essentially broadcasting many hours a week, that my voice is out there, and that I am, I'm able to put myself in these places where I am very public and engage in very public communities and events. They assume that because of those activities, I must be an extrovert. And so, as such, they are really surprised when I disappear, when I need to go into my room and turn the lights off.
Right.
Because that's not behavior that is comfortable to people who get so much energy from those public activities. The fact that I am an introvert and the fact that I have a job that puts me out in a public space can coexist.
Absolutely. I don't think it's black and white.
Right.
And
but that's an assumption that's commonly made. Yeah.
It's absolutely an assumption. So this is why I want to talk about what the heck is an introvert versus an extrovert. And I say this to my clients. I'm like, think about your body being like a big battery pack. How do you recharge that battery pack so you have energy throughout the rest of your day? Mm-hmm. And it boils down to this. It's it's a simple thing. It's like, do you recharge by being with people or recharge by being alone? And unfortunately, it's not unfortunately, but only 25% of the population are introverts.
No way.
So,
is that true?
Yeah, isn't that interesting? Yeah, I did a little research on this, and I'm like, God, no wonder. So the majority of the people out there are extroverted, so that's why they don't get introverts. And remember, there's a scale. I mean, I know some people that they don't ever want to leave the house. They don't ever want to, be doing anything. They don't like to go out in public, all that. I mean, they may go to the grocery store and to their job, but then they come right home. I'm kind of like you, like so I want everyone to hear this. There's a scale. It's not black and white. So some introverts like you and I, for our jobs, we'll go out, we'll do our thing. And I love what I do, and I love going out, and that's so much fun. But now, I think you and I were just saying this prior to the call, we had to learn, okay, when am I starting to feel drained, and when do I have to go home into my cave because now I need to recharge so I can go out the next day, or maybe I need to stay in for a day or two. And I do that. Like if I have things that happen 3 days in a row where I'm at work all day and then I have a school function at night, or I'm at work all day and I have a dinner, if I have things 2 or 3 days in a row, I'm done.
Yeah.
Like I'm home for about 2 or 3 days. I'll go to work, I come home, and I'm done. Like, don't call me. And that means I don't want to talk to you on the phone. I may love you, but don't call me. Like my mom will call and I'll look at it. And that was one of the things I was reading about. It said, even people you love, if they call you and you're in your recharging phase, you look at that caller ID and you go, I just can't. It's not that we don't want to. It's we physically can't. It's like, I don't have any more energy to exchange with you right now. Like I can't talk to you. So it's about learning how to take care of ourselves. And we're not good at that.
Do you remember
all the extroverts.
Do you remember when you came out as an introvert?
I want to say it's really interesting that you say that, because I'm helping people come out. That's a great way of saying that, actually. I had to take naps. I'm not kidding you. I napped every day of my life from about the age of like 14 to 15 until my mid 30s. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's a long time.
That's a lot of naps.
And I never knew what was wrong with me. I was like, well, I had mono when I was 14. Maybe I still have mono. I was like, and then when I'd sleep, I'd come home from high school and I'd sleep. In college, I was very social. I mean, I was out and I realized I was trying to please all the extroverts and be like them. So I'd push myself and then I'd be exhausted. So anyway, I actually, in learning this adult chair model and learning how to be myself and speak up for who I am and owning who I am, when I started doing all my own personal work with the adult chair, which is probably about 7 years ago, is when I started to realize, wait a minute, I'm just not like you. I'm not like these people. And I like my friends. I love my friends. I love going out. But the people that were going out every weekend and doing things like that, I'm like, oh my God, I'm so tired. Yeah. And, and I'm sure you too. I'm making an assumption. I don't want to do that. But I used to make up little white lies like, oh, so sorry, I can't, I'm sick, or I've got company, or I'd make things up because I didn't want to let people down. Yeah. Because I would get invited to things all the time because I look very social, right? Yeah. And I do, so I'm not a shut-in. I do go out and I do things, but, I would say I really came out and started claiming who I was when I learned this work, about 7 years ago. And then I just started telling people, and I don't have shame about it. I'm very matter of fact. I'm in my adult chair and I'm like, yep. No, I'm not going with you, but thank you so much for inviting me. I really appreciate it. In fact, that same mom, who again I adore, her son that she calls a shut-in had invited me over. My son and I were home alone, and she had all of her extended family was in, a lot of people over at her house. And she said, oh, this is over the summer. She said, oh, come over. Your son wants to come. And I said, yeah, well, I'm sending him. She said, aren't you coming to the barbecue? And I said, and in my brain, my adolescent, that ego was like, yes, go. You want to meet new people. But I had 3 days of functions. And I said, you know what? I said, I would love to come, but I know myself really well now, and I'm an introvert. I said, I need to recharge. So I think I'm going to use the time to recharge when he leaves. And I'm so sorry, but I'll catch you the next time you have a party. Yeah. So, and it feels so free. I have no guilt, no shame. It's just a matter of fact statement. I have my power. I'm like, no, thank you.
It's a funny thing. I think I discovered that I was a burgeoning introvert in college, and it was I had gone to a very small high school. I mean, my graduating class was 52. I went to a very small liberal arts East Coast college university when I went away from home, and I found myself. I guess in hindsight, I think I thought I was really going to thrive there because that was my experience. But I found over the years my anxiety just grew and grew and grew. And through a sort of cascading series of events, I discovered that I wanted to go into broadcasting, and my school did not have a broadcasting program. So I transferred to University of Colorado. I went from a school with 1,700 people to a school with 35,000, and I thrived there as a result of being able to hide.
Yes.
In the larger school gave me more of an opportunity to be anonymous. I was able to go to larger classes. I paid better attention in those classes. I focused more. I was able to write to my professors electronically and deal more with them online rather than having to set up office hours. It gave me the channels I needed to come to understanding what allowed me to thrive socially was being able to be anonymous when I needed to. That was really empowering for me.
Wow.
It then actually made it more difficult later in life. I ended up in a job many years later where I was in public relations and would have to go into, for a very large company, a global company, and I would travel a lot, and in a big company, they make you do all those tests, right? The personality tests, how do you work on a team?
Yeah. Like the Myers Briggs and everything.
Yeah, like Myers Briggs. But what's interesting about that? I find these tests are wildly contextual, right? Because I would be working so hard in this environment, and I would have to really force myself to be the extrovert in these kind of environments, right? In sales environments, presentations, those sorts of things. When I would take those tests, I would trend toward extroversion rather than introversion. But really, it caused people to judge me accordingly and to expect things of me that were no longer comfortable. And I'd really have to struggle with sort of being that introvert in extrovert's clothing.
Wow.
It made it a really hard 7 years at this place. And it's largely determined, I think, my intention to freelance.
Isn't that amazing? So how are you now with telling people, like if you're invited to something and your whole body is screaming like, please don't go. We need to recharge. How do you express that to people?
I think I'm pretty good at it. I'm, when it's not my wife. Which is interesting. We just had this experience together where I was just like my skin was crawling and I was like, I felt my hair standing on end, and we had to go out for a neighborhood event. And I said, I just want to be under my covers right now. You got to understand this. You're asking me to do this. It's really hard. Are you sure I have to do this kind of a thing? And it was important to her. And so I had to sort of gut it out. And when you gut it out, when you're experienced, I think, and aware of these tendencies, it's pretty easy for me to put on the extrovert suit for a couple of hours, and I was able to do it, but it ends up being something that I am constantly aware of. It is akin to chronic physical pain when I'm having to force myself to be the extrovert in a social situation when I'm not ready for it.
Absolutely. I completely agree. In fact, I'm just looking at my list. I pulled something off of, the Huffington Post. It was 23 signs you're secretly an introvert. Mm-hmm. And I'm not going to read all 23, but a few of them, I'm thinking about you going to this party. Networking makes you feel like a phony. We don't like small talk. We like to go deep with people. We might have been called too intense. We find small talk cumbersome. Going to parties is okay, but sometimes we don't really want to meet other new people. Yeah. We'd rather be alone. We get downtime does not feel unproductive to us. You shut down after you've been active for too long. I love this. Yeah. And this is an interesting one. You're in a relationship with an extrovert. Do you think your wife is more of an extrovert?
No, I think she's an introvert, and has very similar sorts of traits. Probably not as introverted as I am, but the worst part is I think we're not always in sync with our extroversion.
Yes.
It would be so great if we had like separate caves and could just go to them. But sometimes, she's able to really put on the extrovert suit, and I have to get out, and sometimes she has to do it because we're not always, on the same track.
I've worked with some couples, and one of them leans heavily in the introverted scale, and the other is the opposite, and it's tough because one of the partners, wants to go out every weekend and at parties and do all this, and the other, the spouse or the partner is like, I need to stay home, and what's wrong with him or what's wrong with her that she wants to go party all the time? And I'm like, it's hard, and you really got to get clear about what your needs are, which is, again, we're not good at that. Typically we want to please our partner. We want to do what the other person wants us to do. But I think I've talked about this too. When we act and do things to please other people or to fit in, even if we're not in a relationship, but if we just do things to fit in, when we say yes, and when our body is screaming no, we betray ourselves.
Now, how does that manifest? I mean, I kind of know what it feels like, but I think it's a really interesting way to phrase it.
Yeah, because when we sit and everything inside of us is like, I don't want to go to that birthday party, or I don't want to go to that neighborhood function. Everything, it's like the adult part of us is like, no, we don't want to go. But then the mind kicks in and goes, oh no, we're going because you're going to get judged. And so there's this whole shaming things that oftentimes happens, especially when everyone else is going. And why don't you want to go? What's wrong with you that you don't want to go? So the betrayal it's like we're not in line with our higher self. We're not in line with our truth. And we're too afraid to speak up about it. We don't know how. And we're so afraid we're going to get abandoned by our friends or judged. We just kind of shut down what our need is, and then we go with the crowd. And then when we're there, we're typically in a bad mood. We're not happy about it. We're really tired. And then we come home totally exhausted. So we betray what is true for us. We're betraying our true self. That adult part, it's like we're putting a bag over our head going, okay, I'll do what everyone else wants me to do because I don't want them to be mad at me. Mm-hmm. So I just had a client last week who, there's another one that just came up, and she had this lovely trip. It was like a training / workshop with some friends planned. That was a few hour drive. And And surprisingly, like out of the blue, her boss decided to come in the first part of the week, and she's not getting along with her boss. He's very draining. They don't have a great relationship. And his boss came in to ride in the car. She's in sales. And she said, so the first part of her lovely training, she couldn't make because she was with her boss. So anyway, by the time her boss left 3 days in, she was then supposed to get in the car and drive 4 or 5 hours to this training. She says, I did not want to go, but I was so afraid that everyone's going to be upset with me. I went, and she was exhausted and all this. And she ended up having a nice time, but she said she didn't want to go, but she didn't know how to tell everybody. And I said, this is about learning. And this is not just with being, by the way, an introvert or an extrovert. It's like all of it. It's like, who are we? We have to start owning who we are. So in this case, with this girl I was speaking with, I said, okay, so say it out loud. Mm-hmm. I am an introvert, whatever it is. I have ADD. Whatever, I'm getting a divorce. I'm this, I'm that. We try to hide who we are because we're so afraid that other people are going to judge us, but we're like putting a mask on in order to hide ourselves so we don't get judged. But people are going to judge us no matter what we do. So it's like when we just start owning who we are and speaking it from that adult chair, people don't judge us, I find. When we own it, the other person feels the energy and the presence of who we are. So if I say to somebody, hey, I'm an introvert, I need to recharge, so I can't go, I'm so sorry. Typically, people don't come back at me. But if I say it from that adolescent chair, which is more about, again, wanting to please them, I'm worried that you're going to be mad at me and reject me. So I might say, well, I don't know. I'm kind of tired and I've had a long week. Are you going to be okay if I don't come? Then what do you think that other person's going to say? They're going to say, oh, come on, you can come for 3 hours or an hour. It's not a big deal, blah, blah. But when I'm really firm and I'm really boundaried and I know what my truth is and I'm speaking from that place, nobody pushes back. It's like, oh, well, you sure? And I'm like, oh, I'm sure. There's no way I'm leaving my house tonight. Like, I'm not coming. Okay, well, I'll catch you next time. Okay. Yeah. So really owning who we are. And it's okay. It's okay to be an introvert. It's okay to be an extrovert. Who cares? Just own who we are. And then we can maintain our power. It's like, I keep my power with me instead of giving it to you and pleasing you.
This gets to this concept, I think, that's been in vogue now, I think, for the last decade or so, neurodiversity, right? That says, everybody is on a spectrum. Everybody's brain is on some sort of a spectrum, and whether it's ADHD or introversion, extroversion, and as you say, and the whole idea of neurodiversity is coming to appreciate the unique differences that each of our brains hands us. And I think that's something that was a big lesson, I think, when hearing you talk about it and going back to my experience both at the corporate job and in college, it is this experience of being able to appreciate what becoming an introvert allowed of me, right?
Yes.
And being able to understand that this introspection gives me a certain view or a certain perspective on the world around me that is unique, and to be able to celebrate that rather than feel shame for it because I just wasn't up to going go-karting again. No, there isn't any buried material there. No, I assure you.
Of course.
Did I say that too loud?
But I mean, in the research that I've done on being an introvert, our nervous systems are on such overload. That's why it's like being at a concert. Like I love music. But being like at the Bridgestone Arena here, like this gigantic arena, and listening to it, I want to like collapse. Like I go and I feel the energy of other people and I walk out of there and I'm like on the floor. Like it's so draining because our nervous systems get overwhelmed because we're typically, again, deeper thinkers. We take in much more than an extrovert. We look at details that other people are not seeing. That alone is draining. So there's like a true reason why we are that we need our downtime. Yeah. Our nervous systems are overstimulated. We need a break. And that's not the case for all of us.
Yeah.
I mean, an extrovert doesn't do that. They just don't do that. So,
it's a funny parallel. You're making me think about some interesting behaviors that I have. As part of my work, I'm a photographer and a videographer, and I find when I shoot a lot of music, right? I shoot a lot of concerts. And when I go to a concert as a spectator, I'm a disaster. Like, I have to stand way in the back and I have a seat, but I don't use it. I stand in the back by the door and I watch from a distance and I enjoy it from there and then leave as soon as I possibly can. But when I shoot a concert and I'm behind the camera, that function is sort of allowing me to focus my sort of introversion into that function, right? And so I'm behind the camera. I can shut down the other stuff because I have a singular purpose and I can channel all of my energy through that purpose. And for some reason, as you say, my nervous system doesn't get impacted as much as when I'm there trying to force myself to enjoy it.
Yeah, and you're focusing on one specific thing. We're very, very, very good at that. We're very good at that.
I think it's an interesting thing to think about the activities that you take on that give you stress. For me, a concert gives me stress, but shooting a concert is a way I can take it in and
it's very different. You're not in this crowd of all these thousands of people overstimulated. Again, when we talk about the excuses, though, like why we can't come, when we talk about why we can't come to different functions like go-karting or parties or whatever, we want to say it like it's a fact. It's not an excuse. And again, that's that difference between saying it from the adult versus the adolescent. I just wanted to make that point too. Again, it's factual information that we're truly tired or we're truly drained or we truly need that recharge. Yeah. So I just want to add that. And to be really conscious of this for our children. I'm hearing this a lot with parents that are judging their kids in a loving way. They're worried. They don't understand what's going on. If we can just look at our children through different lenses. Now, I'm not saying that, kids that are all up in their rooms are, they're just recharging. Maybe there is depression or something else, but oftentimes that's all it is. Mm-hmm. And we may have one. I'm looking at my own kids. My younger son is an extrovert, like way extroverted. He comes home from school, even when he was a little kid and when he was like 5 and 6 years old. I want so-and-so to sleep over. Can I go over to so-and-so's house? Yeah, blah, blah, blah. And then his brother, who's like 2.5 years older, says, he'd walk in the door and I'd say, so what do you want to do right now on a Friday night? And he'd say, well, he used to say, I need downtime. I'm going to go upstairs and take a bath. I'm like, okay, go ahead. Wow. And he'd go up and play with Legos and be all by himself. And then he'd come down and go, okay, now I'm ready. So again, it's not this extreme thing. And I'm sure that you would agree. It's not that we never want to be with other people because we do.
Yeah.
But we just need to be able to be recharged and have a full battery before we go.
Well, yeah, and I find I'm better company, and I'm more interested in other people, and I'm more of a participant when I can legitimately say I'm ready.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Vice versa. Now, these extroverts, they get recharged by being with other people. And many extroverts, if they're alone for too long, and a lot of them even need to come home and just relax for a bit. But again, there's a difference between relaxing and just like watching TV for a little bit versus recharging even. Because an extrovert will quote unquote relax for a while, but then they're like, then their battery gets drained if they're alone, and then they need people. They get drained the exact opposite way that we get charged. Yeah.
Hence the often sort of judgmental conflict if you're not completely aware of it. Yeah.
Especially when we're in that 25% box. I mean, there are not as many of us out there. So that's one of the reasons why I really wanted to talk about this, because it just keeps coming up. And really, people don't understand what it is. Because like I said, people think it's if we like alone time. That's not what it is. There's a very big difference between liking alone time and needing alone time. An extrovert may like a little alone time, and then they want to go to party after party or be with a bunch of people. Mm-hmm. An introvert needs that alone time. We need to be alone. And we may be in our bedrooms, doors shut, lights out, reading, writing. Oftentimes I come home, I just sit on my back deck and I just look out at the trees. We like to be outside versus inside. Do you find that?
Well, no, that's where that's where I part ways. I tend to be more of a, I've got my cave, I've got my, my technology. I tend to feel really good there.
Well, think
Outside,
about it like
there's
this,
bugs
though.
and stuff. I don't like.
Well, think about this, though. If you have an opportunity to be at a restaurant where it's really noisy on the inside, or go to at the outside seating where there's like 5 or 6.
Oh no, yeah, that's much better. No,
that is kind of what I'm talking about. Yeah. If you're in a situation where there's tons of people, would you rather be outside with fewer people or inside where? Yeah.
Oh yeah, so, no, I'd be out on the deck with one other person drinking a beer and feeling good about things. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. So.
I'm not a meanderer. Yeah. I set up. I'm more like the Godfather. I sit in the back with and like 1 or 2 people can come up to the table and then I'm okay. I'm Don Corleone of the social set. That's what it is.
Awesome.
This is great. I love this conversation. It makes me feel right at home. Thank you so much, Michelle.
Yeah.
And I'm glad we're back on track. Yeah.
Yes, for sure.
Here we go. We're planning our schedule for the fall, and thank you all for downloading and listening and for tuning in. We sure appreciate it. And on behalf of the fine and brilliant Michelle Chalfant, I'm Pete Wright, and we'll catch you next time on The Adult Chair.